To many in the mainstream, simply asking the question, would it matter if Europeans went extinct, would make me a deplorable far-right lunatic, full of hate, sick and twisted, and some sort of conspiracy theorist. But even if you could get past the anger and the rage and the opprobrium, the modern liberal would probably say something like, it doesn't matter anyway, I don't care what colour somebody's skin is. But then, of course, would they say the same thing if the Japanese people were a shrinking minority in the world, if the Peruvians were? I think when you view it like that, you can see that any people disappearing would be sad, white or Japanese or whatever. Especially Europeans. I mean, they've produced a lot of things, invented a lot of stuff which has aided the modern world. Now, just to be clear, I can understand a concern if some maniac keeps banging on about this and tries to bring forth some sort of race war. However, should that fear stop us even asking the question when European birth rates are in massive decline, when mass immigration to Europe is massively increasing? Can we not even contemplate the future of European people? If you look at this data here, if the world had 100 people back in the year 1800, 21 of them would have been European. If you play that forward 25 years from now, you'll see only 5 will be European. Now, in modern Britain, we're told a lot to consider minorities and their wants and their needs and making them feel included, but in a global context, we're supposed to completely ignore that Europeans are a shrinking minority. On top of that, we have a mass immigration, which is changing our homelands by the year. And with that, a progressive ideology, which sees Europeans as fundamentally bad and something that has to be, quote-unquote, deconstructed. And that leads to bizarre interviews like this on Sky News, where a presenter interviews a Pakistani author about his book titled The Last White Man.
Mohsin Hamid is the author of The Last White Man, a novel about white Americans who wake up dark-skinned. And I'm pleased to say, as I said, he joins us now. Mohsin, good to have you with us. I mean, it's an interesting concept for the book. Just tell us a little bit about it.
Oh yeah, The Last White Man, an interesting concept. I wonder if you'd say the same if the book was entitled The Last Black Man or The Last Asian Man. And sorry to keep interrupting, but how smug is this guy's face? Can you imagine going on Pakistani television writing a book called The Last Asian Man and looking that smug with yourself?
Partly what the novel does is it makes the reader imagine things. And it gives some hints as to how you can imagine. Mm-hmm. But what you wind up imagining comes at least partly from you. And so the novel, I guess, is inviting readers to make stuff up and then see how that makes them feel.
Well, that made no sense at all, but go on.
Yeah, I think it begins from the idea that like race is an imaginary thing. We kind of made it up. It doesn't actually exist. It's not like a waterfall or a planet.
Categorizations that were put in place.
Yeah, this stuff has been invented upon us.
If you really believe that, why didn't you call your book The End of Colour or The End of Racism? Why did you have to say The Last White Man? That says clearly that you do think race matters.
I think when Obama was elected, there was a feeling that things were going in a particular direction. And subsequent events have suggested that that's not the case. The rise of sort of strongmen leaders all over the place, the continued environmental degradation, and the rise of overtly racist discourse.
Yep, you just heard that right. The man who wrote a book on the mass extinction of white people is also complaining about overtly racist discourse.
And so I think that it's very dangerous to be pessimistic about this stuff. I think we have to kind of find our way to an optimistic viewpoint.
And do pray tell what that optimism may be.
And the novel tries to do a little bit of that. It tries to say, what other way is there of living? How might that be? What is the, in a sense, racial apocalypse where everybody becomes brown? And maybe that racial apocalypse isn't an apocalypse at all. Maybe it's the beginning of something, better.
Right, so your optimism is basically, I guess, white people being genocided, or at least bred out of existence by a mass of, well, as you call them, brown people, and that's the future we've got to look forward to.
That racial apocalypse isn't an apocalypse at all. Maybe it's the beginning of something, better.
Right, so there you have it. This guy comes on with his views if he was white that would be somewhere to the right of the Nazi party, yet he gets a primetime slot on Sky News. Yet as always, simply raising the alarm about this sort of progressive thinking makes you a toxic bigot. Even though there are many reasons to be concerned in this day and age with progressive ideology, 10 years ago the EU was talking about how it should undermine national homogeneity according to its migration chief. We have a constant demonisation of any European national identity and a celebration of anything from outside of Europe, almost as a standard coming down from the state. And statements such as this coming from figures in academia such as Susan Sontag, who stated the white race is the cancer of human history. It is the white race and it alone, its ideologies and inventions, which eradicates autonomous civilizations wherever it spreads, which has upset the ecological balance of the planet, which now threatens the very existence of life itself. It's kind of mad that if you question this sort of thing, they'll call you the evil, white, privileged, supremacist bigot, or whatever the trendy words are these days. On top of that, these views may be not held wholesale, but are at least to sympathise with across modern-day academia. Yet, do I hate anybody simply for being a different ethnicity to me? Do I want some sort of race war? Of course not. Why would I? The point I'm making here is that Europe is going through some major changes. We're becoming a minority on our own continent. We should at least be willing to have a conversation if that's what we want and be able to decide which sort of destiny we want for ourselves. These are just my thoughts, however. Do let me know your thoughts down below and do consider subscribing to the channel.